Lot is often remembered as the nephew of Abraham, the man who chose the fertile plains of Sodom, and the survivor of a city consumed by fire. But hidden in the shadows of his life is a disturbing and rarely discussed story, a story of fear, survival, and human desperation. It is the story of Lot's daughters, who made a shocking decision that would shape nations and echo for generations. This is not the kind of tale told in Sunday school. It is messy, uncomfortable, and morally complex. Yet, it is preserved in the scriptures for a reason. Through it, we see not only human brokenness but also how God weaves his purposes even through human mistakes. To truly understand the daughters of Lot and the controversial actions, we must go back to the days when Abraham and Lot first journeyed together, and when the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah loomed large with both prosperity and wickedness. Lot was the son of Haran, Abraham's brother. When Haran died, Lot became closely attached to his uncle Abraham. Their bond was more than just family, it was survival. When Abraham was called by God to leave his homeland and journey to Canaan, Lot went with him. For years, Lot prospered under Abraham's shadow. They both grew so wealthy in flocks and servants that the land could not sustain them together. To avoid conflict, Abraham graciously allowed Lot to choose where to settle. Lot lifted his eyes and saw the lush Jordan Valley, a land that looked like the garden of the Lord. But appearances can be deceiving. The valley was home to Sodom and Gomorrah, cities infamous for their sin. Lot chose the fertile land near Sodom, and over time, he moved closer and closer until he was living inside the city itself. This decision would mark the rest of his life. Sodom and Gomorrah were cities where violence, sexual perversion, and pride reigned unchecked. God, in his justice, determined to destroy them. But because of Abraham's intercession, angels were sent to rescue Lot and his family. The night before judgment fell, the angels urged Lot to take his wife and daughters and flee. But Lot hesitated. His wife's heart was tied to the city, and she looked back as they fled, turning into a pillar of salt. Lot's daughters, traumatized, watched their mother vanish in an instant. By morning, fire and brimstone rained from the heavens. The once prosperous valley became a smoldering wasteland. Every city, every person, every living thing, gone. Lot and his daughters ran to Zoar, a small city spared from destruction. But even there, Lot felt unsafe. Fear haunted him. He believed judgment could strike again. So he left Zoar behind and took his daughters into the mountains, settling in a cave. The Bible paints the picture starkly. Lot and his two daughters, alone in a cave, watching from a distance as the smoke rose from the valley where Sodom once stood. This cave was more than just a shelter. It became a prison of fear, silence, and despair. For Lot's daughters, the trauma was overwhelming. They had lost their mother, their home, their community, and every sense of normalcy. Day after day, the silence of the cave pressed on them. There were no husbands, no prospects, no future. In their minds, the world had ended. They had seen fire consume entire cities. How could they believe that anyone else survived? The daughters looked at their father, the last man alive, in their eyes, and a desperate plan began to form. The older daughter spoke first. "Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us, as is the custom of all the earth. Let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father." This was not a scheme of lust but of survival, or at least what they thought survival meant. They believed that unless they acted, their family line would end. But their solution was shocking: to intoxicate their father and sleep with him, without his knowledge. Answer: the plan was set. The cave where Lot and his daughters took shelter was a strange place, quiet, dark, and heavy with silence. Outside, the desolate hills stretched endlessly, scorched by the memory of fire and brimstone that had once consumed Sodom and Gomorrah. Inside, there was no laughter, no singing, no sense of community. Only 3 survivors, bound together not by joy but by trauma. Lot often sat near the entrance of the cave, staring into the distance as though expecting to see familiar faces return. But there was no one left. His daughters, unnamed in the text yet remembered forever for the decision, whispered among themselves. Their silence was broken by a gnawing fear: what future do we have? For a woman in the ancient world, survival was deeply tied to family and lineage. Sons ensured a name would not be forgotten, daughters ensured alliances and inheritance would continue. Without men, without a wider family, Lot's daughters felt they had no future. They looked at their father not as a source of comfort, but as the only remaining thread of survival. Their mother was gone, turned into a pillar of salt for looking back. Their suitors, their kin, their city all burned in sulfur and ash. To us, their plan may appear shocking, even disturbing. But in their eyes, it was the only way to preserve life. The eldest daughter whispered to her younger sister, "Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father." It was not spoken with passion, nor with lust, it was survival, cold and calculated. To them, the world had ended. They believed there was no man left to give them children. The younger daughter hesitated, perhaps torn between morality and fear. But she followed her sister's lead, because sometimes despair silences conscience. They offered their father wine. Lot, weary and broken, drank deeply. His daughters waited until he could no longer discern reality. That night, the eldest went in. The cave that had been their refuge became the stage for a decision that would echo for generations. The scripture is clear: he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. In the morning, nothing was said. The weight of silence was heavier than the stone walls around them. The next day, the eldest said to the younger, "Behold, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in, that we may preserve seed of our father." Answer: the younger did as the elder had done. Again, Lot knew nothing of it. 2 nights, 2 choices, 2 daughters who believed they had no other way. Both daughters conceived. The eldest bore a son, and she named him Moab, ancestor of the Moabites. The younger bore a son, and she named him Ben-Ami, ancestor of the Ammonites. From despair and secrecy came nations that would later play both hostile and pivotal roles in Israel's history. The Moabites and Ammonites became constant thorns to Israel, sometimes enemies, sometimes forbidden kin. And yet, from Moab's line came Ruth, the Moabite woman whose faith brought her into the lineage of King David and eventually, Jesus Christ himself. What began in a cave, with fear and questionable choices, was not beyond redemption in the hands of God.